The seeds of the 1965 Indo-Pak War were sown in the tumultuous partition of British India in 1947. This historic event not only marked the end of British colonial rule, but also set the stage for decades of conflict and tension in the region. The partition, which cleaved the subcontinent along religious lines, led to one of the largest mass migrations in human history. Millions of people were uprooted from their homes, leading to widespread violence and chaos. Amidst this upheaval, the fate of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir remained unresolved. The Maharaja of Kashmir faced immense pressure from both India and Pakistan, each vying for control over the strategically significant region.
Both India and Pakistan claimed Kashmir, each presenting historical and cultural arguments to justify their claims. This dispute quickly escalated into a full-blown conflict. The First Kashmir War broke out in 1947-48, just months after the partition. The war saw fierce battles and significant casualties on both sides as each nation sought to assert its dominance over the region. The war ended with the United Nations brokered ceasefire in 1949, which established the line of control, dividing Kashmir into areas administered by India and Pakistan. However, this ceasefire was only a temporary solution. The underlying tensions over Kashmir remained, with both nations continuing to fortify their positions and maintain a heavy military presence in the region.
The decades following the First War saw a period of uneasy peace punctuated by sporadic border clashes. These skirmishes served as constant reminders of the unresolved conflict. The issue of Kashmir continued to fester, becoming a focal point of mistrust and animosity between the two nations. The local population in Kashmir also faced significant hardships, caught in the crossfire of this prolonged dispute. Over the years, numerous meetings and negotiations were held in an attempt to resolve the issue, but none succeeded in bringing lasting peace. The border skirmishes and political unrest only added fuel to the fire.
By the early 1960s, Pakistan, under the leadership of President Ayub Khan, began to believe that India was becoming increasingly vulnerable. This perception was influenced by several factors, including India's recent military engagements and internal challenges. India, still recovering from the Sino-Indian War of 1962, faced internal challenges and was perceived as militarily weaker. The war had exposed several weaknesses in India's defense capabilities, leading to a period of introspection and reorganization within the Indian military. Despite efforts to strengthen its military, India was still seen as vulnerable by its neighbors. This perception emboldened Pakistan to consider more aggressive strategies to achieve its objectives in Kashmir.
This perception, coupled with a belief that India was consolidating its hold over Kashmir, led Pakistan to believe that immediate action was necessary. The political and military leadership in Pakistan began to devise plans to alter the status quo in their favor. Emboldened by their assessment of India's vulnerabilities, Pakistan launched a series of covert operations in the disputed region. These operations were meticulously planned and aimed at creating a significant impact. These operations, collectively known as Operation Gibraltar, aimed to infiltrate Kashmir, incite an uprising against Indian rule, and ultimately liberate the region. The plan was to exploit the local discontent and create a situation that would force India to relinquish control. The infiltrators hoped to galvanize the local population into a rebellion, believing that the people of Kashmir would rise against Indian administration. However, the reality on the ground was far more complex. While there were indeed elements within Kashmir that sought liberation, the response to the infiltrators was not as overwhelming as Pakistan had anticipated. The Indian government quickly moved to counter these efforts.
However, India was quick to detect and respond to these incursions. The Indian military, despite its perceived weaknesses, acted swiftly to neutralize the infiltrators and restore order. This rapid response set the stage for a larger conflict as both nations prepared for a full-scale war. The 1965 Indo-Pak War was now inevitable, with both sides gearing up for a confrontation that would once again bring the subcontinent to the brink of chaos.
Operation Gibraltar, launched by Pakistan in August 1965, marked a significant turning point in the already strained relations between India and Pakistan. This operation was a bold and calculated move by Pakistan, aiming to alter the status quo in the region. The operation involved sending Pakistani infiltrators, who were disguised as Kashmiri locals, across the line of control. These infiltrators were tasked with blending in with the local population and creating chaos from within. Their primary objective was to foment unrest and instigate a rebellion against the Indian administration in Kashmir. By doing so, Pakistan hoped to weaken India's control over the region and gain a strategic advantage.
However, the operation was met with limited success. Despite the initial infiltration, the plan did not unfold as Pakistan had anticipated. Indian intelligence agencies had prior knowledge of Pakistan's plans. They had been monitoring the situation closely and were prepared for such an eventuality. As a result, the infiltrators were largely intercepted or neutralized by Indian security forces. The Indian military's swift and effective response thwarted Pakistan's plans.
The failure of Operation Gibraltar to achieve its objectives led Pakistan to escalate the conflict. Realizing that their initial strategy had not succeeded, Pakistan decided to take more drastic measures. On September 1, 1965, Pakistan launched Operation Grand Slam, a full-scale military offensive aimed at capturing the strategically vital Akhnor sector in Jammu and Kashmir. This sector was crucial as it served as a gateway to the rest of the region. The offensive, spearheaded by tanks and infantry, caught Indian forces off guard, initially giving Pakistan an advantage. The sudden and aggressive nature of the attack put the Indian military on the back foot.
India responded swiftly to Pakistan's aggression, mobilizing its troops. The Indian army quickly regrouped and prepared to counter the Pakistani offensive. The Indian forces launched counter-offensives on multiple fronts. The Indian military's response was both strategic and forceful, aiming to push back the Pakistani advances. What began as a localized conflict in Kashmir quickly escalated into a full-blown war between the two nations. The intensity of the conflict increased as both sides committed more resources and troops to the battle. With battles raging across the international border in Punjab and Rajasthan, the war spread beyond Kashmir. The conflict now encompassed multiple regions, drawing in more forces and leading to widespread devastation.
Operation Grand Slam, launched on September 1, 1965, represented Pakistan's boldest gamble in its quest to wrest control of Kashmir from India. The operation, conceived as a swift and decisive strike, targeted the Akhnor sector, a strategically vital area south of the Pir Panjal range.
The capture of Akhnor would have given Pakistan control over the only road link between Jammu and the Kashmir Valley, effectively cutting off Indian forces in the region. Pakistan committed a significant portion of its armored and infantry divisions to the offensive, hoping to exploit the perceived weakness of Indian defenses in the sector.
Initially, Operation Grand Slam achieved a measure of success, with Pakistani forces making significant advances and capturing key positions. The Pakistani advance sent shockwaves through the Indian military establishment, prompting a swift and resolute response.
India rushed reinforcements to the region, including its elite armored units, to stem the Pakistani tide. The Battle of Asal-Uttar, a pivotal engagement during Operation Grand Slam, would prove to be a turning point in the war.
The Battle of Asal-Uttar, fought between September 8th and 10th, 1965, marked a decisive turning point in the 1965 Indo-Pak War. This battle was not just a clash of arms, but a testament to the resilience and strategic brilliance of the Indian Army. The name Asal-Uttar, which translates to real answer, aptly describes the Indian response to the Pakistani offensive. The battle, which took place near the village of Asal-Uttar in the Punjab sector, witnessed a fierce clash between Indian and Pakistani armored formations. The terrain of the region, characterized by its sugarcane fields and waterlogged areas, played a crucial role in the unfolding of the battle. Indian forces cleverly used these natural features to their advantage, setting up ambushes and defensive positions that caught the Pakistani forces off guard.
Outnumbered, but not outmaneuvered, Indian forces, led by the legendary tank commander Lieutenant Colonel A.B. Tarapore, inflicted heavy casualties on the advancing Pakistani armored columns. Lieutenant Colonel Tarapore's leadership and tactical genius were instrumental in turning the tide of the battle. Despite being heavily outnumbered, his strategic deployment of tanks and infantry created a formidable defense that the Pakistani forces could not penetrate. The Indian Army's strategic use of terrain, along with the valor of its soldiers, stalled the Pakistani advance. The sugarcane fields provided excellent cover for Indian tanks and infantry, allowing them to launch surprise attacks on the Pakistani forces. The waterlogged areas further hampered the movement of Pakistani tanks, making them easy targets for the Indian gunners.
The Battle of Asal Uttar is remembered as one of the largest tank battles in military history, earning its place in the annals of warfare for the sheer ferocity of the fighting and the tactical acumen displayed by Indian forces. The battle saw the destruction of over 100 Pakistani tanks, a significant blow to their armored capabilities. The Indian forces, despite their numerical disadvantage, managed to hold their ground and deliver a crushing defeat to the Pakistani army. The Pakistani offensive, blunted at Asal Uttar, began to falter. The heavy losses in men and material forced the Pakistani army to retreat, marking a significant turning point in the war. The success at Asal Uttar boosted the morale of the Indian forces and provided a much-needed impetus for further operations.
India, seizing the initiative, launched a counter-offensive across the international border in the Punjab sector. The Indian Army, buoyed by their success at Asal Uttar, pushed forward with renewed vigor. The objective was to relieve pressure on Indian forces in other sectors and to force Pakistan into a defensive posture. The Indian advance, aimed at relieving pressure on its forces in Kashmir, targeted the city of Lahore, Pakistan's cultural and economic hub. The move was strategic, aiming to cut off supply lines and create a psychological impact on the Pakistani leadership. The Indian forces advanced rapidly, capturing key positions and putting Lahore within striking distance.
The Battle of Ikagil Canal, another major engagement in the Punjab sector, saw fierce fighting between Indian and Pakistani forces. The canal, a significant defensive barrier, was heavily fortified by the Pakistani army. However, the Indian forces, displaying remarkable bravery and tactical skill, managed to breach the defenses and secure a foothold across the canal. This battle further demonstrated the Indian Army's capability to conduct complex operations under challenging conditions, solidifying their position in the war.